I'm Chris Williams from Cyclone Fanatic and a proud Iowa State graduate from the class of 2007. No one shows up like Iowa State fans.
And Cyclones support Cyclones on and off the field.
Your gift can provide scholarships to students, fund groundbreaking research. We could even drum up opportunities for the marching-band. Visit MoveWhatMatters.com to learn how you can make an impact today.
And welcome to Let Him Cook. I'm Dylan Coon, joined as always with Nigel Dyson. Nigel, we are almost exactly a week away from the Big 12 tournament starting. A little less than a week, especially once the people listen to this podcast. The women's tournament has started, and to my knowledge, the men will be playing on the same court, and it's gotten a lot of traction on Twitter. I know you literally just looked at it. Give me just immediate thoughts on this basketball court.
Well, my initial thought was, but after that, thought it was giving really big Brooklyn Net vibes. But I know that's not really a diss to you. That's your team. Which, who the hell is a Nets fan? I mean, look at this guy. It's weird to have that type of vibe of court. Like it looked like kind of a Memphis style, like when Penny first got there, and then like they had a blue court and whatnot. Yeah. I don't know. It seems weird to have that for a neutral conference tournament. Like I understand if that's like a shootout or a special in like Vegas or something, but like I don't know. Maybe it's just I'm not used to it, but I'm not initially a huge fan of it, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah, it's real busy. For those that haven't seen it, it's a great court, kind of black trim on the baseline and sidelines, and then the Roman numeral 12 literally plastered all the hell over the court. Looks kind of like those nasty NBA Cup courts that are just like neon colors. I was even telling you, like, I miss when Duke had like the yellowest pine court you've ever seen. Like it was like the yellow brick road. Yeah. And now it's like super pale white. Like what's wrong with like just a nice golden brown yellow gym court? Like I think like your mark is so big into this, like we have to stay new and hip and young and like just give me a basketball court. Like I'm not really, you know what I mean?
No, I get what you mean, but I think like you gotta think too. Like when a team, like especially Blue Bloods, when they're getting the money they get on a year-to-year basis, like I fear they're getting so much money to where, yes, they can pay their team to come on to campus and live happily ever after for a season, but also like you also get a bunch of extra money for facility purposes that you just don't know what to do with. Sure. So you bring in people like John Shire's not thinking about the damn floor. He's just like, what game is tomorrow? You know, that's what's on his mind. So they have people come in and do that. And like a McDonald's, how every McDonald's in America has been modernized. Essentially, There's no more red buildings with the yellow arches on the top of the building. Like everything looks like a brown prison with burgers. Yeah. I just think that the interior designers of today are very big on just like monochrome everything. Like obviously for a college basketball court, you got to have your colors in there, obviously, but I think a lot of people prioritize like really like just neutral colors, like overall. Yeah. So that's why this court is a crazy decision, because like this is not even close to monochrome. This is like honeycomb, but
super busy.
No, yeah, there's a lot going on. But I think too, like some interior designers, they come in and don't really understand the history or the appreciation that us fans that have watched this sport for years have for obviously like that kind of old feeling basketball court. So I think too, to a degree, I think it's just it was a bad call on the interior designers or whoever took part in that. But needs some work for next year. I'm not too excited about that.
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe it's just a one and done kind of a court design. I kind of hope so. We got a couple games to talk about, and then We can touch on Kansas State, but I more so want to preview the Big 12 tournament and kind of get your thoughts on the path, which is almost set in stone. But let's start with Arizona. Coming off of a loss against Oklahoma State, a bad loss. You've got kind of a get-back game. Iowa State obviously lost at Arizona, that crazy Caleb Love shot, and then Arizona runs away in overtime. George Niang and Tyrese Halliburton both in the building for this one. Felt just like a really big game. Fran Fraschilla on the call. Just like looked like a great Hilton atmosphere. I watched that one from home, but just had all the makings of like a get your mojo back kind of a game, and played really, really well. What stood out to you about that game where, I mean, really without a question, Iowa State wins 84-67. I mean, let's face it, we're in a slump right now. But whatever happened in that Arizona game, we kind of look like the Cyclones of old. What do you think kind of set that difference?
I really think there's just a fire under their ass. I really think not only were they trying to not lose again to Arizona specifically, but also just trying to, I think they knew what was in stake. Like, I know there was probably rumblings all week that George and Tyrese were both going to show up and be front row, obviously. But I think, too, it's just overall, you just don't want to lose like that again, because that was kind of the beginning of this slump that I would argue we're still in. That was definitely a bright side of it. There were a few games in between Arizona and now that were some bright sides, but overall, I think we're in a really rough slump right now. But I think this was a game that was exciting enough to get people out of bed who were already a little banged up, already coming off some sicknesses, probably just not feeling the best too, just trying to get across the finish line of the regular season. So I think this game just had kind of the makings of getting people excited to show up to work. And I'm not saying our guys aren't excited to show up to work, but some days are just a bit more exciting than others, especially it's a kind of a day and night type of opportunity from Oklahoma State to Arizona. So right. I definitely think opponent just overall was the reason. And it kind of showed because it with Mark Pope leaving BYU, Jackson Robinson leaving BYU. Just overall this BYU team not being the same BYU team that we played last year and kind of developed a little small rivalry with or a distaste to. It just seemed like initially we definitely kind of took our foot off the gas and then essentially had to play catch up the rest of the game. And by the time where the game mattered, by the time we're in the second overtime, we just kind of ran out of gas. But obviously, too, there's a lot of bigger, deeper issues as well that we kind of exposed about ourselves when we do get tired that I'm definitely worried about going forward.
Let's stick with Arizona for a little bit. Milan Momcilovic probably had his best game, and I will say during this kind of slump that we're in, he has played really well, which is, I mean, it's good because he has missed more time than anyone on this team. And if we want anyone to be healthy, just in terms, I mean, we've stressed it so much on this podcast, how big his spacing is to this team, especially when I think him and Curtis are on the floor. And we saw that lineup a lot against BYU, especially down the stretch. I just think it opens up so much. He was 4 for 7 from 3, finished with 17 points, and really kind of was on that mini run that kind of put this one out of question. I do want to take some time to just talk shit about Caleb Love because
please. I encourage it.
2 for 15 from the floor, 2 for 10 from 3. A bit of a free throw merchant performance, finished with 10 points, only scored 6 points from the floor. Not a great game for Caleb Love. And I both pity and admire Arizona fans because I know the Caleb Love roller coaster has always been that. And you're going to have high highs and you're going to have low lows. But a low, 35 minutes and 2 for 15 from the court. I mean, he's just leaving his shoes away from being as bad as Jordan Bohannon at Hilton Coliseum. What a disaster from Caleb Love, who kind of some guys relish playing the villain. And he got booed just about as hard as anybody. And I'm not sure if we got Deja Kelly chance, but we did get RJ Davis chance. So I can confirm someone
It's a
did their
step in the right direction. Yeah,
Someone
it's a
did
step in
their
the right
homework.
direction. But I would appreciate it next time if we got real petty.
Yeah.
I think that could have added a different element to this stinker that he had on Saturday. He may not have made a shot. You know, we may be dealing with a goose egg if we brought out the Deja Kelly chance, you know, from the get go.
Right.
But definitely, I appreciate the just overall effort of trying to get in his head. That's kind of the entire point we have. It seems like we have this type of kid come into Hilton every year, especially with the Big 12 expanding. But yeah, I just appreciate obviously the nod to let him cook. Just because when everyone hates Caleb Love, the world is a better place, in my opinion.
Right. When Caleb Love loses, America wins. That's I will say both guards from St. Louis struggled. Keyshawn Gilbert, 7 turnovers, finished with 6 points. And this is what I said after the game. If Keyshawn, you're going to have an off night. I don't care how good you are as a college basketball player, you're going to have off nights. And I want to commend Keyshawn here because he was incredible on defense against BYU. 8 steals, tying a record with Jefferson and Lipsy, who have both had 8 steals in a game this year, which is just absurd. I would go to say we are the only team in the country that has had 3 different players get 8 steals in a game this year. I'd be shocked if anybody else has that. But if Keyshawn is having an off night like he did against Arizona, he needs to be as intense on defense as he was against BYU. Or otherwise, as well as Nate Heisey's playing right now, we have to have a real conversation about, you know, is Nate Heisey seeing the floor or is Keyshawn seeing the floor? Because if Keyshawn's not bringing it on defense like he was against BYU, Nate Heisey's been really solid on defense all year, and that's really the reason he's seen the court, because for a majority of the season, his offense, I mean, he wasn't even taking shots. So if Keyshawn, we need him on defense. I'd love to have him back on offense, but that's more of a want. We have guys that can fill it up. He's got to be 8 steals and just taking on BYU's best player and meeting him at half court, pulling up his shorts, clapping in the guy's face. That's the kind of demon that we need Keyshawn to be on defense, especially if he's having an off night.
Yeah, no, I don't think benching him is the option. Because I think when it comes to confidence, that might do. First of all, it's going to cause people to just keep talking about it. Like, I feel like from fans to the people who don't like us to the announcers, knowing that that'll be something that when watching our games going forward, people won't shut the hell up about. So I think that could do something to his confidence, where Heisey's already kind of used to coming off the bench, and he's learned how to come off the bench and just try harder. And the results have been vast. they've been completely different.
I'm not saying start Nate Heisey. I'm saying if Keyshawn's having a bad game, we got to put Heisey in. That's all.
Yeah.
Like that.
Well, I mean, I feel like that's kind of what they did. I mean, because he kind of came in and started clicking on all cylinders. I mean, he had 12 off the bench, 2 for 4 from 3. I think overall the bench, our 3 guys to the bench, Chatfield, Curtis Jones, and Heisey I think they were the difference makers of this type of game. I think they just gave us a different level of energy. And when all 3 of those guys can get into double figures against a ranked opponent, shows obviously the overall talent we have on this team still hasn't gone anywhere. It's just about putting the pieces together at the right time and not picking kind of your times when to give 110% effort. It's strange because I feel like we were playing really well. So to see Keyshawn kind of take a step back was a little odd, but that seems to be that common thread of how I've talked about how it's never seemed like we've gotten a great performance out of everyone, even in good wins.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the appointment. That's kind of the disappointment on my end. It's just like the fact that on our best days, someone is going to have a terrible night, you know, or an out of body experience in a negative way of just not playing like themselves. So I don't know how you fix that. I don't know how we can try to balance that out more. I think this team's just tired. Like, I think last night was a different level of like a whole kind of, it was kind of a showing of how I think as a team they feel right now. I think they're just very, very exhausted physically and probably mentally now. Like it's the more teams you keep adding on in the Big 12, like it just feels like more and more of a drag, like of just getting through the year. And I think that's, the NCAA's problem with this conference realignment, while it is entertaining and exciting because we do get a bit more bigger names in the conference, it's taken a huge toll on the overall product of really good teams. And I think I get it. Unpredictability in college sports, it sells tickets. It keeps the casual fan engaged. But I think for us diehard fans, it tends to piss us off more than anything because you end up losing a lot of games you have no business losing. And then you end up winning games you could lose, but you know that those games are exciting enough to where you don't want to. You want to give your best effort. But I think this is just kind of the problem with just getting a conference close to 20 damn teams. I mean, it's going to get exhausting at some point. I don't know what's going to have to change, but I think that's a huge problem going on right now, and just people, prioritizing TV deals over the sanity of our athletes.
Yeah. I think the Big 12 really needs to look at in the offseason is going back to an 18-game conference season, because the SEC, I think, has as many teams as we do, and they're only playing 18 games. I know we're going to get, here's another thing I want to bring up. The Big 12 got a lot of shit last year, Iowa State included, for manipulating the net. Go ahead and look at the non-conference strength of schedule of some of those middle-of-the-road SEC teams. Part of me, the conspiracy theorist in me, the tinfoil hat in me, is like, of course, ESPN's not going to bring that up. It's the SEC. But it's almost identical. Texas, Vanderbilt, both the Mississippi schools, all of their non-conference strength of schedules are bad. And it has basically given the top edge, the Auburn, the Alabama, the Tennessee, a bunch of quad one wins where it's like, well, I don't know if those teams played a tougher non-conference schedule, would they be quad one? I digress. What I'm saying is the Big 12 really needs to look into going back to 18 games, because that means Iowa State can play two more teams that, it's going to be like a Mercer or a team that you're not biting at the ticket to go see them in Hilton. But yeah, come March 5th, we're not running on gas when we're in double overtime, against BYU, because we have some reserves left, because we have already played a full conference schedule at this point. We've played 19 conference games, and that's more than some entire conferences play. And at some point you're putting your entire conference at a disadvantage of giving them 20 really tough games.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of benefit in just playing everybody once. Unless if that's the case, you can try to pull a football and go into divisions within your conference, which I think that just complicates things, but it's definitely an option. But I think in theory, say we play everybody in the conference one time, I still think you get everyone's best shot, but everyone's not as tired at the end of the day. And who knows? I think to compete and want to be that 1 seed and 2 seed that we would like to be going to the tournament, I don't know if you can really, as I would say, if you can afford a Mercer, because that would be very on brand for us. I think you still got to challenge yourself in the off season. I mean, in the out of conference season, and try to go for those higher tier teams like a Purdue, which we're doing right now. But I think there's a lot of benefit in just playing everybody one time, just because you don't get fatigue of a team that is really, like, for instance, Kansas. I think in the grand scheme of things, as much as we like to beat them this year, this Kansas team, it's a waste of our time. Give it to us one time. We kick their face in at Hilton. We don't need to go to Allen Fieldhouse again. That's a waste of travel, which is taking a toll on people's bodies and minds. And then also too, it was a waste because we marked up another loss. So there's a lot of benefits to just playing everybody once. And I think you're able to take those games like in Oklahoma State, where you're vastly better than the other team, just a little bit more seriously, and you can handle it with a tad bit more ease.
This is another thing I want to talk about with you. We were talking before we started about luck, and man, it feels like whoever you're a fan of, and I'm sure, I just watched Providence lose a unimaginable game to DePaul. It would take me 5 minutes to get into it, but I feel like everyone thinks luck is always going against them, no matter what team you root for. We met Kansas State when they were playing the best basketball of their entire season. We met BYU when they were playing the best basketball of their season. They had, to BYU's credit, they've done it longer than Kansas State did. But there's also something to be said of, like, if we played BYU in the first week of January instead of the first week of March, I think it's a completely different game. And, like, you're going to take your lumps. And, like, for example, I think Texas Tech's playing a lot better basketball now than maybe they were when we beat them in Lubbock. But, like, I don't know. I feel like Iowa State has kind of been on the wrong side of luck in terms of when they're seeing these teams. And that's nothing scheduling can do. That is literally, I mean, it takes some teams longer to figure out. Or, I mean, Kansas State was such an anomaly. A case study needs to be done on their season because they went from terrible to best team in the country for like 2 weeks to back to terrible. So, and, let me not put the, cart in front of the horse because we play at Manhattan on Saturday, but I don't know. It just feels like Iowa State met some teams at the wrong time.
Yeah. No, and that's a huge, I think a lot of teams have fell into that trap with us, I think to say we're constant in the TJ era alone, to say the entirety of each Big 12 season we've just played perfect basketball is a crazy thing to say because we haven't. We lose games at OK State all the time. We've lost games at Oklahoma. Like there's dumb games we lose all the time, and
it's almost TCU.
Yeah, like there's just things like that are in a way out of your control, but also it's just like even like up hills and valleys of what a conference season can be. And I just think like you just play these teams once, you get people a little bit more excited for each game. Not only the fans, but just the players. Because obviously as a fan, you're sitting at home or as you're sitting at the game knowing that this game means a little bit more because you won't see this team again. I think there's a lot of times where we'll be playing a Kansas, for instance, and we know in the back of our heads, no matter how we do in this first matchup, we still get them again a few weeks later. I'd rather not. Like, if you can't beat them in the first meeting, whether it's at Allen Fieldhouse or in Hilton Coliseum, like, it's probably not going to happen. Like, if you need more than one shot at a team, I don't know if it's always going to be a lock for a win. Like Arizona, again, that game in itself is an anomaly because say that was the only game we played, right? I could die on the hill of being like, well, it took God and chance and fate for them to beat us. So, like, I'll live with that result. But it just seems like a lot of our games are like we're being very careless, we're sluggish, we're lazy, and those are none of our characteristics. So it's like it's almost like a kid acting out of character because it's bedtime. Like, I think Iowa State basketball needs some damn sleep, and this conference expansion just for the sake of half of our games to be on ESPN Plus, one of the best teams in the country, can't even watch half the games for free, and then also just overall not having all the bodies you need to get through a 20-game season. Like it's a real problem. And I just think right now the NCAA is just really just trying to overcompensate and, try to bank off of what the tournament can build up and be, and just overcharge during regular season. And then also try to get all these deals by expanding conferences. There's a lot of negative outcomes to just looking at college basketball from a capitalistic mindset. It's not completely feasible right now.
And the other thing that sucks too is so much of it is driven by football. And if we really do only play each team once, it would probably mean the Big 12 needs to expand again, which you never know.
One more expansion for any of these conferences, like even the ACC is huge now. Like you got to go into divisions. Yeah. It's got to be like conferences have to at some point become some entity. Like you don't there's going to be a few teams within your conference that you could see in the tournament, but you may not see at all during the regular season just because they're not in your division, which is fine by me. Like I think it's either got to be that, like if you're going to continue to just expand, like at some point this isn't a conference. This is a league. So we need to start making pools. And like, I think if you're not for that, which I'm personally not, I would much rather just play all these teams we have in each conference one time. And that goes for every single conference. Like I'm cool with that. But if people are trying to encourage just more and more conference expansion, really, because they really just want some more money in their pocket, like I think you also have to think, all right, well, have we thought about breaking off into divisions? And the answer to that question is probably going to be no.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you. And so much of it is football driven too, and basketball kind of is an afterthought in all of it with the SEC and the Big Ten. It just sucks. It sucks. It's the reality of the sport right now. But let's talk a little bit about BYU. Unless do you have any more thoughts on Arizona? Are you good to get into the BYU game?
No, I think overall, I thought that was a real big turning point for us, honestly. I thought, like I said, this was going to be 3 very easy, like winnable games. But a part of me kind of just knew they weren't going to lay down. And it only helps that Iowa State was bringing back Tyrese and George, obviously, for the game, which I'll end on this. I definitely think we need to do that more. I think it's very hard to get. We don't have the pull that a lot of blue bloods have. Like I saw Kevin Hart at the Duke game a few weeks ago. Like there's teams out there that are just able to attract, obviously, that A-lister talent. Tyrese, respectfully, he was at the Michael Rubin party. He's probably a B-list celebrity at this point.
Yeah,
that's all we got. We got to use that to our advantage because that's going to do a huge benefit for us for recruiting. And honestly, too, bring back like a Jamal Tinsley, bring back like a Marcus Fizer. Like I would love to see more Iowa State alumni back front row for games. There's no excuse as to why we can't get those guys free tickets on the house. They gave their blood, sweat, and tears. All of them for free. Mind you. So
yeah,
I think the least you could do is give them a front row seat to BYU, Iowa State, or whatever conference game you choose. But definitely would like to see more alum going forward, front row and center at games from now on.
Nigel, this was before you were an Iowa State fan, but Melvin Edgum, Iowa State legend. It was a non-conference game in Provo, and gave the BYU faithful the bird,
the unholy finger.
Yeah. And so what I'm saying is if we get Melvin Edgum at Hilton Coliseum the next time BYU comes to Ames, make it happen.
Make it strategical. I mean, who was a big game that let me think.
Donovan Jackson at the next Kansas game.
What a pull.
Wouldn't mind that.
What a pull. I'm trying to think who else. Shoot, I mean, even a Jaron Holmes, like bring him back for like a Texas. Oh, like that. Yeah. There's options for sure.
Gabe Tauscher, TCU.
There you go.
Give me Naz Long. If Naz Long comes to an Oklahoma State game, we might finally beat Oklahoma State.
Him or our boy Scotty.
Yeah.
I think that would be a nasty pull because what was it? Him who had the game-winning 3 against OK State, or was it Naz?
Naz he had one that won the game and he had one that forced it to overtime. But that's when Oklahoma State, he had multiple. Gotcha. Scotty Christopherson might have. That was kind of right on. I'm showing my age here, and I'm sorry to the old heads that listen to this because they're like, how young are these?
Sorry if this was your prime.
Yeah, I was 10 years old, so I wasn't as locked into Iowa State basketball as I am right now. But
what year was this?
Scotty Christopherson was like the very end of McDermott, the very beginning of Fred Hoiberg. So I would guess like 2009 to like 2012.
Yeah, my God, I was in the 3rd grade, so sorry.
Yeah, right.
Wasn't really tapping into Iowa State basketball at the time.
I was playing Wii Sports. Like what? I don't know what. Yeah.
It's no shame.
Let's get into BYU. I was lucky enough to be at the game. KCCI, as always, this winter battling through some sickness, so I got called in. Happily, anytime I can go to Hilton, love being there. Nigel, I'm so upset because I have been to a lot of very good Iowa State wins. Not once have I been to like an iconic. Like as soon as a Cyclone fan brings it up, that other Cyclone fan knows immediately what game they're talking about. And in this game, we trailed by 21 points. We turned BYU over 30 times and had just like Hilton Magic kind of gets beat ad nauseum. Especially Fran Fraschilla can say it as much as he wants, but every now and again you get like a C-team ESPN crew in Hilton. And they just keep saying it, and you're like, all right, we get it. Nigel, I know we didn't against BYU. Hilton Magic is so real. It is a legitimate force in the universe.
Yeah.
And it was so alive. Again, I mean, like, it was a 21-point deficit in the second half, and we cut it to 18. 18. Nigel, if you watch any college basketball game in the world and the home team cuts it to 18, that home crowd does not give a shit. They think that game's over. You're down 18 in the second half. Wrap it up. When I tell you the crowd got to their feet and made it so loud I couldn't hear the photographer next to me, 18-point deficit. It's just nuts. And it seriously felt like BYU, their points were going backwards. I kept looking up at the scoreboard and being like, oh, we're only down what? And then we would miss an opportunity, turn BYU over, and then we get a layup on the other end. And I was like, oh my God, are we going to do this? And there were so many times my hands are shaking. I'm looking at the clock. I'm looking at the scores. I'm looking at how many fouls BYU players have. And I'm doing the math. And I'm counting strikes at this point. And I'm like, I think we can pull this off. Oh, Nigel. We were talking about this before we started too. I feel bad even starting the conversation here and just going straight to the end, but I think that's what everybody is talking about. In the end of regulation, at the end of the first overtime, and at the end of the second overtime, just some like monumental mistakes being made. And I think the blame is somewhere in the middle. I think the play calling can be better. I think the execution can be better. Let's do this. If you are drawing it's up to you. There's 10 seconds left. It's a tie game. Who are you giving the ball to? Because I don't know if I have a good answer anymore for this Iowa State team. Or what are you kind of getting? What do you want to see?
Let me see. When we had the ball, I want to just make sure I got the score right, so I know time and situation. When Keyshawn kind of just threw a rock to Milan in the corner, what was the score? Was it tie? Was it 85-85?
I think we were down. I think we were down 86-85.
Okay. All right. Yeah, no, I got something here. Actually, let's move him over here. Alrighty. So here we go.
Oh,
can you see this? Can everybody see this?
It was. Am I stupid? It was 87-85.
87-85. Are we
We're
up?
Down two. We're down two.
Okay. Here's what I'm gonna do. All right. So we got a DHO. This is Curtis Keyshawn DHO right here. Right.
Dribble handoff for those at home.
Yes, I feel like Reddick when he was writing on that the mind of the game. Anywho, essentially here we're gonna have our boy Milan and Jefferson at the other corner. We'll have our 5-man here. Well, no, actually, Jackson was in foul trouble.
Well, here's the thing. We just went full small ball. And I was going to bring this up later. We got out-rebounded to hell. We got doubled up. Well, I think BYU had 50 rebounds, but it's because we played small ball for the last 20 minutes.
Where I was getting – because you brought that up. I want to get into that. But what I was getting to this was essentially just a high ball stream with Curtis. I want to see if there's going to be a switch. We can get a mismatch. Okay. Essentially, high ball stream with Curtis. Milan does a crackback. If Curtis doesn't have something to tie the game, we have Milan for a wide open three. That fill-in three for Milan was open all night.
Yeah.
So I would have just gone with if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But I feel like we overcomplicated it right there, trying to like have him on the strong corner as opposed to the opposite. Because I feel like if you can get Curtis going to his right, I know it's not his go-to. I know he's better off on his left, but honestly, you can flip-flop it and just have the DHO go the opposite way and just switch wings. But essentially, it would have resulted in a crackback three for our boy Milan Momcilovic. That's what I would have drawn up. I don't know. I can't tell what the hell we were trying to draw up because it seemed like they just wanted to get Keyshawn and Milan on the strong side, and then for whatever reason, get Jefferson just right here. Which I don't know when you miss a layup after a really hard foul and it rims out. Like I've never seen a ball rim out before, at least in Hilton.
Insane.
It's definitely not ideal. I wish someone would have just hit me with a car then, so I didn't have to watch the rest of the game. But yeah, Yeah, I think going small ball was definitely a choice, just due to the fact that BYU had a grown ass man in the game.
Yeah.
But he looked like a 2K created player. And I mean, not the finished 2K created player. The 2K created player you go in there and edit because like he's got like hazel eyes and dark. He's got like a brown Caesar cut, but he's like African black. He was a strange, and then he had like a handlebar 1970s mustache, and like I'm all for the mustache, solo mustache, but like his looked a little like policeman mustachy. I don't know, odd guy. He also looked 34 years old.
Yeah.
Do you know who I'm talking about?
Kiba Keat. I'm gonna murder this name. Kiba Kita, I think.
Kiba had 46 offensive rebounds.
It felt like more than that. Yeah.
It just felt like, and then he had a gut punching put back dunk. And then to see him shoot free throws too, to know that we could have hacked the Shaq. Why were we doing that?
Well, here BYU shot. That's the other kind of difference in the game. BYU goes. They had a guy miss a couple late. At one point, they were like 22 for 25. They finished 25 for 31, 80% of the team, which is still incredible. But at one point, they were floating around like 88%, 90% as a team from the charity stripe.
Yeah.
Mercy.
And that's fine. I know like the DNA in BYU is we're going to have some hustle guys.
Good free throw shooters on that team.
But one thing they're going to have is they're gonna have some guns on that team, some gunners. They're gonna get it up. Best believe that. But no, I think that was a huge out of BYU hit tough shots. I'm not saying they didn't. I'm not saying they're a bad team either. Like this isn't a terrible loss, but it's like it's just one of those games where it's like you should have won. And given the situation, like we usually win these games, and it felt like when we got to the first overtime. And BYU missed that shot. I saw Keyshawn and Curtis specifically like scream and look up at the sky as if they won already.
Yeah.
And not realizing once they sat the hell down, I am exhausted. And I just think that kind of plague came over the entire team because the rest of the overtime, both overtimes, we just looked terrible. And I mean, BYU didn't look hot either, but it was just like two people in like the 15th round, just like throwing haymakers at each other.
Right. And
it's like, dude, his nose is already broken. We should probably go back to our corners. And we just didn't give in. And I just think at some point, BYU got a few extra licks in, and that was really the difference maker. But honestly, just overall, us getting killed in the glass was terrible. I don't know if we should ever go that small ball again. I think in a perfect world, for that last play that we tried to get a last shot on, I think there's a situation where you can have Deshaun out there for rebounding purposes, or a Chatfield if Deshaun's in foul trouble. But I think there was no excuse to not have our starting five play. I think maybe in that situation, I would probably, given the game he had, I'd probably take out Keyshawn just for that moment. And I'd put Taman at the one probably because I did initially say Keyshawn, but probably do a DHO with Keyshawn and Taman. I mean, it's CJ and Taman, and then try to get a crack pack 3 from Milan because Taman was doing a great job getting to the rack, and I know Curtis can do the same thing of getting 2 feet in the paint and drawing 3 and 4 people. The amount of times that Milan off of just relocating on the perimeter is open. It's a joke. Like he has time to set his feet, drink a cup of coffee, read a few pages of the newspaper. Like he's got time to shoot. So I think, like I told you off camera, less is better. And I think when we try to jazz up last minute in a game that matters, like it's just not the time. Let's read the room, please. So it's just unfortunate that it came down to things outside of not only the kids' control, but overall, just what it seemed to be the program's control. Like it just seemed like you kind of had it right where you wanted them. And that's the thing. I saw this comment being said a lot, and I couldn't agree more with this because with TJ saying earlier, we just haven't gotten that moment yet. Like we haven't had we haven't played that perfect game yet. And I'm not saying no game is going to be perfect, but like essentially reaching one's potential. This is a game where you could have reached said potential because by showing that we can win any type of game, we can go beat Kansas by 70 points on our home floor, but we can also dog it out with somebody on our home floor for, going into double overtime. Like, I don't know how many college basketball games are going into double overtime nowadays, but it's not many. So it's nuts to me to think that, obviously the game was right there. We did everything and beyond just to get back into it. But I think that's the problem with, kind of taking your foot off the gas and thinking BYU is going to be sweet after a nice win like Arizona is, again, you just don't come out with that same intensity. Having to play catch up, you're going to be in a situation that you shouldn't be in to begin with.
And also, in very Dylan fashion, let's go back to the very beginning of the game after we just talked about the end of it. In the first 10 minutes, BYU only scored 5 points. They finished with 88 points. And to play as good of defense as we did in those first 10 minutes, I want to say they probably had a turnover. They might have had 10 turnovers in the first 10 minutes. It felt like they were having a turnover every other possession. And it was only 10-5.
Really, the whole game, it felt like that. Yeah. Like the turnovers they were having, it was like, are these guys throwing the game? Are they?
But the other thing about these turnovers, though, is let me see if I can find the points off turnovers. But so many of them are dead ball turnovers, and I would say where they kill you is on those pick sixes. If we can get a steal into a run out and a finish at the rim or an and one, God forbid, points off turnovers. Okay, Iowa State did have 34, so that's a shit ton. Could have been more. I mean, if you turn the team over 29 times, you better have a lot of point turnovers, but it felt like a lot of them were passes out of bounds, travels, offensive fouls, just kind of like turnovers that didn't allow us to get into our fast break offense, especially in that first 10-minute stretch where our defense is lock solid. And BYU is a very good offensive team, and we played some of the best defense we've had all season, but we just couldn't convert on the other end. And BYU obviously goes on that huge run kind of in the middle of the game, kind of the middle, last 10 minutes of the first half, first 5 minutes of the second half, where BYU just got up to, like I said, a 21-point lead. And then at that point, you're just fighting for your life, and you have to start hitting home runs because, you're down 12 in the bottom of the seventh. You got to get the heavy hitters out. And like you said, we had 3 players play over 40 minutes in this game. Keyshawn, Taman, and Joshua Jefferson all played over 40 minutes. It's scary to me because, like you said, I think this team is kind of already on their last legs. They've dealt with so much injuries, so much adversity, where we already have guys playing through a broken thumb. Keyshawn, I don't know if he's still 100%. Sometimes when he's running back on defense, you can still see a little bit of a limp. So just like playing that many minutes in what turns out to be a loss is just extra deflating for the team and coaches and fans and just everyone in the arena.
Yeah. I mean, it gives me very similar vibes to, and I know a lot of Iowa folk are Chicago fans as well. But it's like when Thibodeau was with the Bulls and you play Derrick Rose into the ground, and it kind of sets your entire franchise back a few years and what could have been years you competed for a championship. That's why I am a huge advocate for depth. Like, you need to be able to recruit a few guys knowing that they're not going to play all the time, but they can come in and make a difference. Because those holes just don't get as dramatic. Like with us getting down 20 like that, just to tie the game up again is going to be exhausting. You're going to be exhausted.
Yeah.
Like, that's not something to tread lightly for. So I think going forward, man, we have got to have more depth on this team. We cannot just be 8 straight. Like, this era of college basketball is slowly getting skill-wise very similar to the NBA, where you got guys like Curtis Jones who can come in and hit a 3 from the Pioneer logo. Like, that was not happening 20 years ago in an Iowa State basketball game. So I think as the game evolves, so does mindset and mentality of building a team. And I think TJ just has to get a lot more open with, like, there should be no reason. And I'm not trying to be an advocate for Noyes if he's ready or not, but whoever's in Noyes' spot should be able to come into the game and make an impact.
Yeah.
Like, it shouldn't be an argument. And if you don't think a freshman out of high school can do that, buddy, you better hit the transfer portal. There's only 600 kids in there waiting for their name to be called. So there's really no excuse. Like, I don't want to be in this situation anymore where we have the talent. The talent is not the problem anymore. It's the lack of talent, because it's the lack of not having enough talent to have that depth. Yeah. Like that. If you think still that 8 is enough, like it's still 2015, I'm sorry, you're batshit crazy. We're in a new game right now where numbers matter, because with as long as the seasons and conferences continue to expand for conference purposes, you have to be ready to be able to. We're going to lose some of you. Some of you will die in the process, but who's going to be able to tap in while we're reviving Taman Lipsy and his broken thumb? Like, I get it. Like, you want to be able to have people set a standard early in on your program. People have already done that with TJ. Like, I could argue that he's had a guy set the standard for what our team and our values are, like, for years to come, from Brockington all the way to the current team right now. Like, you have enough guys within that era of players to where those are the culture setters. Those are that's the foundation of your program. You want to continue to find people with the similar character and abilities of those type of guys, but we also got to get a few dogs in here. And I understand that's probably going to cost some money. It's easier said than done, but there's a lot of options, and there's a lot of people who go under the radar, given just obviously the current transfer portal climate. But definitely want to see some more depth in this team next year, because we have the pieces. Like, if this team was in 2015, this would arguably be one of the best teams in the country, because you really could get away with playing 8 guys a game, because of the scheduling and the lack of expanded conference. Like, you're just not playing that many games. Like, even the Big Ten, that was a big conference 10 years ago, was not playing a Big Ten schedule now. And then also add in the travel, add in all the other rigmarole that comes with going from Penn State to Oregon on a Tuesday night. Like, this isn't normal. And I think more people have to think about this stuff before just like letting it happen. And that's why the NCAA as a league, and this is another conversation for another day, they're very reckless in the way they do everything when it comes to controlling and letting stuff happen. It's just, there's a lot of issues, and it affects small things like BYU versus Iowa State on a Tuesday night.
The last thing I want to touch on this BYU game is, and it's been in other games too, where it feels like as a team, we put ourselves in a position to win games, and then we don't. And I don't know if it's late game execution. I don't know if I'm really having a hard time looking at our roster and saying, sometimes it's just feed the hot hand. If we have, if Kurt or Milan or Keyshawn have 25 points, that's who I want to have the ball. But in a vacuum, I'm drawing up the last play. I don't know if I trust one single guy to say, go get a bucket. I'm like an Isaiah Brockington, a Mario Shayak, to be fair, those teams weren't nearly as balanced as this team is. But as balanced as we are, I think sometimes that can be a detriment to, when we need a guy to take over the game and to square up his defender and say, I'm going to score on you. I don't know if we have a killer like that this year.
Yeah. I don't think we've ever had that guy. Because
we've had guys that can go get a bucket.
Who can go get a bucket, but they're limited. Brockington, while was a good 2-level scorer, in my opinion, wasn't always the best from 3. Like, I'm not going to bank on him getting a tween pull-up 3. It's usually get to that mid-range.
Yeah, he would get to where his spot. Like, how many guys, besides maybe Milan, where it's like he can get to his spot as soon as he touches the ball?
For a lot of guys, portion of this season, I would say Kurt, but it hasn't been very consistent.
And a lot of his stuff isn't off the dribble, though. A lot of his stuff, his off the dribble stuff is like floaters. But in terms of like ISO, clear the court out, let a guy go get a bucket, that's where because that's what the easiest thing to do is with, 10 seconds left on the shot clock.
I just feel like with this team, like, I think that was when going out to recruit for the missing pieces of what makes this team good, like, I think in TJ's mind, essentially he was trying to straw away from that in fear of you're going to get an AJ Star on the team where he's going to be a cancer. He's not going to contribute to winning. He's just going to be eating up money from the university. Like, it just seems like when we have had that person in the past where you can just go get a bucket, i.e. Blake Hinson, TJ and his program, for whatever reason, like Keyshawn said, not everyone can play here at Iowa State. That tends to scare away that kid who can go get a bucket. That kid who can go get a bucket is probably going to go play in the ACC where he can play 30 minutes of stress-free basketball.
Really easy to get buckets in the ACC right now.
I'm not lying to you. I'm not disagreeing with you. But I'm just saying. I mean, that's literally. I'm explaining what Blake Hinson did. Like, he was like, I'm not trying to sweat a lot. Let me just pop threes at Pittsburgh. Like, and you gotta, again, everyone has their own battle, but you can't tell me that a player like that, of that nature, of that, who has that scoring mentality at any given moment and can hurt you from all three levels of the floor, couldn't help this team. But I just think that type of person, that type of player, and the coach that TJ is, there'd be a lot of friction in July and August when people are trying to figure out roles and whatnot. So I think, like I said, I don't know if you tell TJ, hey, tell your boys to stop playing so hard because he might hit you. But I definitely think like the way we play at times can be very limiting offensively because everyone's priority is the defense, meaning there's not as much battery usage on offense. And think about it, as much as you need physical like energy to run an offense and run an offense well, you also need to be able to think and make the right reads. And it just seems like kids are so gassed and brain fogged, maybe because of the flu, but also because of just like, yo, I'm exhausted. Like, I would love to see the average man go run a mile and then go do some multiplication facts. It's hard to use your brain when you're tired. That's why athletes sound so dumb in post-game interviews. They just like exercise for 40 minutes. You want to talk to them and you want a detailed thesis on what just happened. Right. Like it's people forget that these are human beings and they're 18 to 23 year olds at the end of the day.
Also, as someone who was on the court last night, it had to be 102 degrees down there on the court. Yeah. I don't know the names of the officials last night. Those guys could not get enough water. They needed a water cooler to themselves. They were sweating. They were getting a workout. We had an official doing high knees down the sidelines. That game had it all.
And the guy who always does the high knees that I always see on Twitter.
It might have been. Might have been. Just like, again, that would have been a legendary, what the game it made me think of, and I heard other, press members say it after the game, the Oklahoma, I think it was 2015, they were down 20 points in the second half, George Niang's on that team, Dustin Hope, Monte Morris, where Hilton just would not let that team lose, and the one place where I think Hilton Magic didn't show up is, as you mentioned earlier, that Joshua Jefferson, how that ball did not go in, I have no idea. Joshua Jefferson has no idea. Sir Isaac Newton doesn't know how that ball didn't. If gravity's real, I think that ball goes in. Seriously.
That wasn't Hilton Magic. That was Hilton Voodoo.
Hilton Tragic is
someone had a Josh Jefferson voodoo doll and was stabbing him on that play. There's no way.
Move
I don't know.
Basketball.
And again, I said I don't know how many times you missed that shot. Like let's do that play 10 times. How many times did he miss that layup?
0.
Like, unreal.
If he does it 100 times, he probably makes it 98.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And same thing with Caleb Love. He could shoot that ball 100 times, and he'd probably make it twice.
Yeah. I don't know what I don't know how we're getting
something about a bug in a windshield. Thank God that shot went in against Texas Tech. I just have to keep telling myself that was a huge win in Lubbock. I'm going to finish with this, and we might not get into the Big 12 tournament tonight. And that's all right. We can talk about it next week because we'll only have Kansas State to recap
Yeah, we only
anyways.
have a game to review, so we'll be good.
I was talking about this beforehand. I would say almost the entire year, especially with how we went out last year in March Madness. Illinois played a really good game. Terrence Shannon Jr. had an incredible game. It felt like the Elite Eight was the step that we needed to take. And you love a Final Four because Iowa State hasn't been to one since World War II. But even getting to the Elite Eight would feel like, okay, we are trending in the right direction. We have kind of gotten that monkey off of our back. Haven't been to Elite Eight since I was in diapers. And this slump has made me feel like, okay, maybe we're a Sweet 16 team. Maybe I think we would need the right matchup in the Sweet 16 to get to the Elite Eight. That's where I'm at as of now. I still think this team has it. We've seen this team be Final Four good. Lately, it's just the inconsistency. We looked great against Arizona. We looked terrible against Oklahoma State. We looked terrible against Kansas State. We looked really good against Houston, even in a loss. It's just like the up and down where I think fans don't know what team to come out of the locker room at this point. Is it going to be the Final Four team? Is it going to be the upset in the first round team? I think that's it's just up and down right now.
Yeah. No, again, we're talking in circles, but I really do think it's just like we're playing too many fucking games.
Yeah.
Like it's not rocket science. I think the names you list, the names you just listed off though, like those are all games you could get up and be excited for. Like they're a Houston. You get to play them one time, even if it's at their crib. We're down guys, but this is our only shot at Houston. Like even the losses as a fan, you're not going to be mad at. There's been some losses this year that I'm just straight up mad at. Kansas State being one of them, Oklahoma State being the other one. Like,
yeah, even what? West Virginia. West Virginia.
I would argue and say even Cincinnati was a bad win. Like. But it's because it's in the middle of all this other chaos and bullcrap that we're just not mentally there. I think it's so hard to be present for 20 games straight. Like, especially when you're doing well initially, like you're a top 10 team most of the year. Like, it's hard to not be human and think, oh my God, we've never done this before. What if we really do go to the Final Four? What if we do go to the Elite Eight? None of these guys are ever, like, as much as we want this as fans, none of these guys have gotten to do this either. Like they're not like these other teams who have been there, done that, and just kind of trying to uphold, their reputation. This is uncharted territory for everybody. So I think just there's a lot going on, and I think it's an oversaturation of a mixture of things, and I don't know how to dim that down. I don't know how to I don't know if you want to have the kids go for postseason dark 0-30 mode like LeBron used to do back in his OG Cleveland days. Might be a decent suggestion. Just to quiet some of the noise. I just think that right now there's a lot of noise playing into what can already be a chaotic season that I think listening to us, listening to other college talking heads talk about the game and talk about our seeding this early in the year. I never remembered people talking about seeding this early. It seemed as if with the blow up of KenPom and that being a real resource for people to kind of predict what the tournament's going to look like this year, it seems like they are using that as a talking point way earlier in the season now. You didn't hear about any of that till late February back in the day. Like I just feel like I just think there's just too much going on from a media perspective that we're entertaining a bunch of what ifs, it's so much to an extent that it is affecting the now, and it's hard to stay in that moment. So I don't know if that's got to be, maybe we need to tone it down. I don't know, but definitely I think they just need to minimize the noise, because I think they're a team right now that, yes, we may not be the seed we want going into the tournament. However, like a Illinois team that has struggled as well, but showed sparks like, hey, we can walk into Ann Arbor, beat that team by 30 with ease. Like, I wouldn't want to see them if they were a 9 seed or an 8 seed. Yeah. I wouldn't want to see Iowa State if I was a 2 seed in the, what would that be, the Sweet 16?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I think for the first time, we've been teams in the past that, okay, we can make the Sweet 16. We can make that big game. But can we get over the hump? That's the real question. And it's usually, it's a lack of talent most of the time. Like, you can use that excuse to the teams in the past who haven't made the Sweet 16. But this year, it's there. It's just a matter of getting your rest. Really, I almost want to throw in the towel for the Big 12 tournament. Like, just lose the first game on purpose and have that next 6 games kind of be your sole focus. But definitely, I don't know what it needs to be, because I think more than anything, like, this team just needs rest. Like, I think they just need some time off. It's that simple.
Nigel, I know. I mean, even last year we lost to Kansas State at Kansas State in the last game of the year, and I know you and I came on this podcast and said, "Hey, worst case scenario, we lose the first game in Kansas City, get plenty of rest, and you're ready for March Madness." That team went on to win the Big 12 tournament and made a Sweet 16. And if I know anything about a TJ Altenberger team, they're not gonna lay over, no matter who they're playing.
I don't know. We did that in 2022.
Yeah, that's true.
Remember the game against Texas Tech?
That is years ago.
You should have seen. You should have seen Estas, the bar. Also, RIP. I heard Estas closed down. That's crazy.
Sure did. They sure did.
But I was there for that Texas Tech game. The distraught across that bar. Oh my God.
Was that the Tyrese Hunter year? Did we still make a Sweet 16 that year too?
Yes, we did.
Maybe the Big 12 tournament doesn't matter. I don't know.
One could argue it doesn't, because like last year we thought it was going to give us the mojo we needed to be bumped up to a 1 seed, and it didn't. So it's like I just don't think it's that important. We've done it a bunch of times, even in the Prom years. Like I'm over it. I really am over it. It's not an important championship. Like, as an Iowa State fan going forward, the only championship that should be on your mind is a national championship, is a Final Four championship. Like, we have to start chasing the titles that matter at the end of the day. And I just think, like, being okay, like we said we were okay with going to be trying to just get a national a conference tournament title under our belts. But like, I think if we just continue to strive for that, we're okay with plateauing. And I don't want to see this group plateau.
Yeah. I ain't got a lot. This loss, a lot of the other losses I've been like, let's get right, we'll be all right. Loss at Oklahoma State's weird. The game last night felt like we were destined to win. There was a certain sequence. Keyshawn got a block, and then it went right to a BYU player, and you're like, great. And then Keyshawn forced a steal, all in the matter of like 0.8 seconds. He got a block and a steal. Then I think, let me see if I can get this right. I think Curtis Jones was dribbling it down, passed it to Keyshawn, who knew Milan was rolling the whole time. I don't remember if Curtis or Milan hit the 3. But the whole time they were coming down the court, the entire arena knew what was about to happen.
I'm almost certain that was the Curtis 3.
Okay. I saw him trailing. I saw whoever was bringing the ball up. I saw a 3-point shooter right behind him, and I was like, please hit the trailer. Please hit the trailer.
Was it Heisey?
No, it was for sure either Milan and Curtis. It was Milan, Curtis, and Keyshawn on that side of the court. Someone had a hockey assist, someone had an assist, and someone had a 3.
It was Keyshawn. Keyshawn was up. No. Was it Taman?
I don't think.
I know the play you're talking about. Because it was after the steal that they brought it up on the same wing and banged out a 3.
When that stuff happens, you're like, we're going to win the game.
Yeah.
And like anyone who is watching this, whether you could have been a Louisville fan watching the game, you're like, oh my God, Iowa State's going to win this game. If you had no allegiance and you see stuff like that happen, you're like, that team's going to win the game. And we didn't. And that's like, it felt like everything put us in the position to win, and then we just didn't. And it was so deflating. Man, it sucked a lot. And I hope we can rebound against Kansas State. We've seen this team rebound, but we've also seen a loss like at Arizona, an emotional loss that I think really did some damage to like this team psyche. So I'm interested to see what happens this Saturday. It can go one of two ways. It can light a fire or it can burn you out, and Octagon of Doom on Saturday.
Yeah, I'm just please put me out of my mercy. I I don't need to. If we get swept by Jerome Tang, I might get real reckless on this podcast. I just want to give you guys a PSA up front because I can't take much more of this. I can't.
And we might be playing for a 3 seed too. If we lose this game, we're really riding that line of a 3 or a 4 seed, and that's scary hours for sure. We had a 2 seed all but in the bag. I mean, you could lose to Houston, and as long as you take care of business against Oklahoma State, who just lost by double digits to UCF tonight, love to see that. You probably got a 2 seed in the bag. I mean, we're getting help all over the country with teams dropping games that they shouldn't be, that are right on the same seed line as us. One of those things, man. It's one of those things. A lot of season left. March has just started. It seriously is my favorite time of the year. I hate that we're leaving on a sour note, but that's where Iowa State left us after that BYU game. Kansas City is going to be a blast, and I don't expect this team to roll over. We're probably playing BYU after the first round game in the 4-5 game, and then you got Houston again.
God!
So, lock in. Hold on to your shorts. You got anything else, Nigel? We've already gone long, and we didn't even touch on everything we wanted to.
Just throwing the towel, man. Not on the season, on the Big 12 tournament. I'm not trying to see BYU again because from a record standpoint, they're right there with us, man. Like, we really can't afford another loss because I feel like the committee's only going to just use that against us. So I don't know. I also don't want to say throwing the towel. Forget it. Win the damn thing. I don't care.
Win the damn thing. It's way more fun. Winning, as Curtis Jones once said, winning is fun.
Yeah, it'd be nice to do it now, Curtis.
Yeah. Amen.
That's a conversation for another day, I guess. Let's
not lose a game the rest of 2025.
Just a suggestion. Yeah.
Let's do that.
Have we thought? It'd be crazy after an emotional loss like last night. He walks in. He's just like, "Have we thought about not losing, guys? I don't know. Just me."
It's worth asking the question.
I don't know. Hey, the people are asking.
Nigel, we gotta let him cook. Big game on Saturday. March is just beginning. Go Cyclones. See you guys.
Let's get it.